Welcome to the Awakening Frequency podcast, where truth meets transformation. Hosted by Ledesma and Danielle Henchcliffe. This show dives deep into the unseen, the unknown, and the undeniable forces shaping our world. From UFO disclosure and government cover-ups to whistleblowers exposing hidden truths, we pull back the curtain on the mysteries they don't want you to know. We explore spiritual enlightenment, secret agendas, and the cosmic forces influencing our reality, empowering you to see beyond the illusion. So, if you're ready to break free from the matrix, challenge the narrative, and awaken your consciousness, you've come to the right place. Tune in, open your mind, awaken your frequency.
Welcome back to the Awakening Frequency podcast. This is your host, Danielle Henchcliffe, and my co-host, Donald Ledesma, is with us tonight. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
So, if you haven't already, you need to be following us on audio and video, wherever you can listen or watch your favorite podcasts. We're on video with YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, and Patreon. And with audio, we've got the Spreaker, iHeart, Amazon Music, Apple Podcast, and Castbox, and many, many more. And don't forget to go back to episode 2 if you did not catch it. The Ark, The Secret Files. It's streaming everywhere because it is a perfect segue into tonight's episode, Project Stargate. So, Project Stargate. What was Project Stargate? It was a highly classified U.S. Army and CIA sponsored research program that ran from 1978 to 1995, dedicated to investigating remote viewing, the ability to physically perceive locations, people, events at a distance. Originally developed during the Cold War, this program aimed to explore whether the U.S. could gain an edge in intelligence gathering by training psychics and intuitives. And so this started back in 1978, backed by the DIA, specifically the Intelligence Agency, later absorbed by the CIA. Their research partner was Stanford Research Institute, and the technique that they studied was remote viewing. It's ESP-based intelligence gathering. And the key figures that we're gonna be talking about tonight is Ingo Swann. We got Edward Gaines, Joseph McGonigal, and we're gonna dive into the deep end. You may have heard of this through a movie called Men Who Stare at Goats with George Clooney. And truth is truly stranger than fiction at this point.
Yeah, that's a pretty strange one. I saw the film, and I remember seeing it a few years back. Of course, I don't think it got really good reviews or anything like that. But I never knew exactly what it was, right, or what was it about. But
Yeah.
now I know, right?
Yeah. It
Now
was a
I know.
hard one to sit through. It was, like, back in '08 or '09. I didn't get it back then. And now, like, watching how they made that movie, the consultants that actually did this in real life, oh, now it's more interesting.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Now, I mean, now you can go back. Now I'm going to go back and look at it and just say, "Oh,
Yeah.
no, I know."
I wanna fact check things.
Yeah, but if you guys are listening or watching and on Spreaker and everywhere else, but we are we're gonna dive. This is actually like part 2 to the Ark of the Covenant in a sense, because they were actually doing remote viewing, and we talked about that before, trying to find the Ark, right? And then lo and behold, we start finding out more stuff with this Project Stargate, right? And and we start noticing that they're just trying to dive a little bit deeper into finding, you know structures or people or things that they didn't know that was happening. And I know a lot of this started back in the 1800s where they were trying to figure out how people were actually they were calling them psychics or whatever back in the day, right? And I guess they decided to implement that into the CIA program. How does that do you know how that started?
Yeah, so it actually started with the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, before the CIA, and I really believe that they were using it way before 1978,
Right.
but on paper, they started in 1978, and it started with this guy, Ingo Swann, but I have seen the targets. They get handed an envelope, and they could literally describe someone's nuclear operation, the inside of an engine, like, the detail that Ingo Swann, he is a key figure. He was I would say, the mentor of everyone, and it gradually gets more interesting. It graduates out of remote viewing to outer body experiences. We'll talk
Okay.
about that in a little bit, but I just I have a feeling they say they stopped this back in '98. There's no way they've given up on this edge. Why would they give up an intelligence edge if our adversaries are gonna use it?
Right. And then they used him because they figured that he can kind of see into the future or remotely travel. Because he was doing some really spectacular things as the Eagle Swan, right?
Yep.
So this is how they found him. So they decided to, well, if he could do this, why not use him in CIA or just trying to find out what our our adversaries or Russians or China or whoever, whatever countries are doing, behind closed doors, right? Um, and he was able to pinpoint a lot of stuff, right?
Oh, yeah. I've heard stories about them saving hostages, like, live. That was actually terrifying story, people being kidnapped,
Right,
and they got it down. The people that survived it, they were able to rescue the people that were kidnapped in a different country, different government. I don't know if it was, like, rebels or cartel,
right.
but they had such a hard time explaining where these people were because I guess our adversaries know that we have this type of intelligence, so they put these people inside of a tent, inside of a building.
Wow.
So for a remote viewer, that can trip them up when they're just remote viewing and
Right,
looking at the raw data because it's literally how they started doing it back in the day was putting ping pong balls over their eyes.
right,
They'd cut the ping pong balls to induce it quicker and put a red light, um, 'cause they had a lot of people they had to test and put through this training, and it's like traveling with your eyes closed. It it's like what are those virtual headsets that people play games on? It's like they had
yeah,
that without the tech.
yeah. I guess they were tuned in pretty good with the frequencies, right, or
Yeah,
anything out there. So about Swan, it says, let's see, I'm going to read this to you. It says he was born in Telluride, Colorado, on September 14th, 1933. Swan claimed to have an out of body experience beginning at 3 years of age. During the tonsil removal of our operation, which began to see colorful auras, right, around certain objects. It says these experiences continued throughout his childhood and eventually prompted Swan to do a volunteer participant in parapsychology research at the age of 37. So that was about the time that he actually got out there um, into this uh, program, right around that time.
yep.
So that was
So
was it like in the 1970s? Is that correct? Around
he
that
it
time?
was around 1978, he was the first, and right behind him was Joseph McGonagall's mentor. They came in together.
Right.
I think Ingo Swann may have recruited in the intuitive community.
Right.
People know one another. Um, Ingo, I think, is special because he didn't have the military background because they recruited from within their own ranks from our military.
So he was
From
just a regular. He was just a regular Joe.
Yeah, so that's what I think really is special and sets him apart because he wasn't coming up and trained for this. He didn't volunteer to go fight, in Vietnam
Right.
like remote viewer 001, Joseph McGonigal, which I don't know how he got that. So I guess Ingo Swann must be 000
Maybe.
because um
Well, you said
but
001, right? So yeah,
zero
you
zero
yeah.
one is Joseph McGonigal who came
Ah, okay.
after
After him.
Swan.
All right. And
Uh
was there 5 of them? I think was there 5 of them all in total, I believe?
there was, from what I understand, there's different Stanford Institute had like 5 to 6, and from what I understand, the DIA had their own. The way they all retell the story, they would pull from either the Stanford guys, naval intelligence,
Right.
defense intelligence. It was my favorite is how Joseph McGonigal came into this because he was over in Vietnam, um, and was already having experiences with
Right.
phenomenon, before even becoming a remote viewer. Uh, he tells a terrifying story of being in the jungle, and the only time he was truly scared and almost lost his life was some type of creature getting up into his hut in Vietnam, and he cannot explain what it was, if non-human
Wow.
or human. It was a creature, humanoid,
Yeah.
and he's, a retired US Army chief warrant officer, and he was one of the first recruits of Project Stargate. His remote viewing sessions are renowned, particularly the one where he described structures on Mars. We'll get
Right.
into that in a minute, but, um, he started in 1984, I believe,
Okay. S
because the Mars was May 22nd, 1988 was
Okay.
the infamous one. And because they found out Joseph McGonigal could do OBE, outer body experiences,
Right.
and he started ringing the alarm saying, "Hey, I had a near-death experience in Vietnam in the jungle. That one near-death experience pulled him out of his body, and he thought it might be important." And you were telling me about how he sort of freaked everybody out by proving he could do an outer body session.
Right. And he did, which was I'm gonna bring up the picture real quick, which was this one here. So this is the photo that they were testing his out of body experiences. So they asked him in the CIA. They said, "Well, if you're going to do an out of body, they had a large building, and they put him on the other side of the building. They got this photo right here, which is the picture on the right. Okay." And they put it in an envelope, and they told him, "Okay, I want you to, do your out of body experience, and look for this photo somewhere in this building, and what I want you to do is draw it out when you wake up, draw it out whatever you see." So he said that he went out of his body. He was going down a large hallway. There was a door in the way. He ended up finding this envelope that was hidden. It was hidden, and he was able to see what was inside that photo, right? And then he's when he woke up, he ended up drawing that picture, which blew them away because it was dead on of what they were the picture was, right? What they were seeing, they were just testing to see if he was going to do this right correctly, or if he was true to his word, what he said, right? And lo and behold, bam, he get it. So what did they do? They said, well, hey, you're hired, man. So they had $2 million back in the 1970s or and 80s, for the program. So, they got him in, and lo and behold, there he goes. But at the same time, there was another gentleman. His name is Edward A. Gaines, right? So let's watch this little small video of him, and he trained with Eagle Swan as well. So let's watch a little bit of this guy. Oops, wrong one. Okay, let me find him. Bam, here we go.
My name is Major Edward A. Dames, U.S. Army retired. I am the former operations and training officer for the Department of Defense Stargate program. When I was selected as one of the 5 prototype members, Army members, to be trained by Ingo Swann, my mentor, to whom I later became protege, and that was 1983 and 1984. Training occurred during those 2 years. Ingo had just developed his structure, and so he came to Hal Puthoff and said, "Who's paying for this? Because that was secret." And Hal said, "Well, the Army."
So they did pull from the Army ranks.
Yeah. So
And
now,
I don't know I've seen his story. He's not around doing the circuits as much. He's got into helping finding missing people.
right,
Um, but what they started doing was working with this gentleman and institute called the Monroe Institute.
right,
And I know they all at some point went there for training um, to try this program this Bob Monroe put together with HemISync. And that's where remote viewer 001, Joseph McGonigal, comes into play with one of the probably craziest tr- truth is stranger than fiction stories because he was there for 12 to 14 months at the Monroe Institute training from Thursday till Sunday, working on his outer body experience, his craft.
right,
And he was taking a nap one day, and Bob Monroe wakes him up and says, "There's some gentlemen here from the DoD, the Department of Defense, and they had a target." And in remote viewing, that's an envelope with the target GPS coordinates. So I'm going to read off of this so I don't get any of this wrong because it gets a little juicy.
go
One
ahead.
of the most mysterious and mind-blowing sessions came in May of 1988 when Joseph was tasked with viewing a specific location on Mars, but in the year 1 million BC. The session was requested by a classified client, later to believe to be the CIA, or he says DOD is what he says.
Right,
But if we stick to the documents off of the declassified archives on CIA, McGonagall was not told the location or the time. He was not told it was 1 billion BC. He was not told this was Mars. He had GPS coordinates. He was simply handed an envelope with a sealed instruction. So he can't open the envelope to read it. He's got to use those skills. And inside the envelope, it states the planet Mars, time of interest, approximately 1 million BC. That's all the envelope, all it said inside the sealed envelope. Bob
wow,
Monroe holding this, and he starts going into the session. And I I read the transcripts because it's very interesting how they go about this, each of them a little individual. According to the declassified CIA document that I had got for this is the transcript, and this is what he starts saying. I'm seeing a pyramid. It's like a shadow of a pyramid, very high. It's kind of sitting in a large depression. It's yellowish or orchid color. There's a perception of severe storms, geological problems. And his handler, Bob Monroe, the monitor, would tell him, okay, there's geological storms. You can't see a lot. It's dusty. Go further back before the storms. There's a perception of severe storms. The monitor tells him to go back. And he says, they're looking for a way to survive, but they can't. They're waiting for someone to come or something to happen that will save them. They're tall, thin people in robes, very serious, very focused. I get the impression of a group of them going into hibernation or sleeping to ride out a catastrophic event. Now, this is just a small snippet of the transcripts
Right.
because he also describes what it looked like in its glory and a city. And he would draw during this session and he drew 10 to 12-foot beings next to like normal humans,
Right.
normal sized people. And you can go read the full transcript. There's documentaries out there, but I just found this fascinating that, first of all, he's seeing a civilization on Mars
Yeah.
when we have been told so many different things. And their accuracy, prior targets, they have been used to gather intelligence for our government. And you can just go and fact check and verify, but they like to downplay this the these skills because I don't think he was supposed to talk about this. I
Probably
don't think
not.
he was supposed to
Yeah.
go public. And
Yeah.
that's where he's a little feisty, because those GPS coordinates, uh, apparently there's satellites and you can go and ask for the pictures.
Well, let's go. Let's watch this little video of him real quick, and then what I want to do is I'm gonna backtrack a little bit, okay? After we watch this, so check this out. Thank you, John, for watching right now. Appreciate you, Mr. John Dickinson is watching out there. Love him.
Hey,
He's
Mr.
amazing.
Dickinson.
Yeah, amazing. All right, so here we go. Let's watch this real quick, and then you'll know exactly what Danielle was talking about here, and this is going to break it down pretty good for you.
Yep. They can't classify those pictures because they're in space. So next time I was in California, I went to JPL and they have a big counter where you go in and buy pictures of space. So I went up to the counter and the guy said, how can I help you? And I said, I have this card here, and I handed it to him. And he looked at it and I said, I'd like to see the 4x4 negatives for those locations on that card. And he went, oh, this is the old city on Mars. And he turned around, pulled a drawer open, and gave me a packet, had all the negatives inside. So they're in my book, Mind Trick.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what do the negatives show?
It shows exactly what I described.
It shows pyramids?
It shows a big pyramid. It shows an old fort. It shows a wall that's
On
collapsed.
Mars.
And yeah,
Can I see them?
yeah, I'll get a copy of my book downstairs, bring it up and show it to you. I mean,
Wow, that's
but
amazing.
That's not the coolest thing.
That's so cool, though. You're saying that you remote viewed a pyramid on Mars a million years ago, and we found how do we have imagery of that?
But they're mapping Mars. But that's not the coolest thing.
So it's negative images of those locations now on Mars.
Yeah.
And you can see
and
the
they're
pyramids.
worn. They're heavily worn. They're just much damage to them.
But it's clear they're pyramids.
Yeah.
Okay, he said it'll clear their pyramids. We saw that right there. We know there's a crater there. He talked about that. He talked about how you just mentioned that these large 15, 20-foot beings that lived there at the time, right? So, and he talked about large structures, walls, big caverns that almost city-like that were in pathways that he was looking at, right? So let's go back just a second. Not a second, but let's go back to where this started for him. Now, when he started getting momentum of what he was doing, and remote viewing, so they ended up taking him to Japan. So he was on a show there in Japan. It was like let's just say like Unsolved Mysteries in a sense, but in a Japanese show. So they had him on this show, right? And what he did was people would go to different buildings or different places in Japan or even different cities, and they would okay. Then they would say, okay, this person is going to be where this whatever. Who are we talking about and where they at? And he would say, okay, and he started drawing the picture. It's just drawing. This is the area where they're at, and he did this for a few years in Japan, right? He was dead on target everywhere. A lot of them where he would see him in a building across the street that he knew that they were there, and they would freak out so bad because they said, "Man, he can see all of this, right?" So and then later when you start talking about the package and the CIA, and they give him something, some men in black, I guess, give him something. Hey, we want you to go back, a million years in Mars and tell us what you see, right? So because they had already been doing mapping already, right, and they were seeing structures. So this is probably why they used him, and why not use him, right? If he was already on target, and he's still on target, if he can still do it. So it's not like you can hide anything from him. So why not believe there was a civilization there on Mars a million years ago, or maybe longer, right? That he says that they had to leave that planet and seed themselves here on Earth. So this is the story that I got out of that when he started explaining it a little bit deeper, that's what they did. So, and we've been talking about that, the Anunnaki and all that stuff that everybody always brings up about these large uh, human looking uh, people that were here way before, millions of years ago. Is he, and this is kind of hard to put together because we have no bones, we have nothing like that, right? All we have is the structures. But why not believe what he's saying? And that's the thing. Why not believe it? Because if he's on
Yep.
target, why not believe it?
Yeah, because he also said he saw them in stasis, in hibernation, and waiting for someone to come. So, we've heard more recent stories about whether it's true or not about something being found down in Antarctica, an egg, whether this is true. It's on Reddit and 4chan about someone being in stasis for years, and they can, if you keep up with UFOlogy, their bodies can stay there and their consciousness can travel to
Right.
Earth if they can't bring their bodies. That is one of the thought
Well,
trains of thoughts.
what's that video we always see about the moon landing? That they found a ship, a large ship. They walked in there and found a woman in there, and she has like those toothpicks or whatever in her eyes, and she's like been there for thousands and thousands of years. Now, what if she was one of those beings that didn't make it to the planet? That's as far as she got. Maybe she had problems. I don't know with the ship. I don't know. I've seen that video, and it's kind of hard for me to take in, because I'm going to be the devil's advocate here.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to take in on that video, because we don't. That's the only thing we get out of that. I don't know if it's staged or not, but man, it looks freaking real to me. I don't know if you've seen that before, but it just looks.
I truly believe those men that landed on the moon saw something.
Yeah,
Um, I mean, they've all sort of gone on to do something. One of them started a foundation, and they spoke very vocally about having experiences and encounters, but the people that stepped off and onto the moon for the first time,
right.
everything portrays them when they come back as being traumatized.
Yeah,
They're showing signs of PTSD. Um, and they portray that in not just documentaries, but Netflix has a show, and it talks about the king being obsessed with the astronauts that landed on the moon, and he was just dumbfounded how they weren't excited to tell him about their journey stepping on the moon. Like,
right.
that's just another piece of history saying they didn't come back right. Like,
And now we have now we have private companies landing on the moon. They just landed one not too long ago, a couple weeks ago. They landed one there. Now they're waiting. It has to wait for the lunar cycle, so that way the batteries can charge on it and they can get more
Yeah, because
information.
it's landing on the backside,
Yeah,
right?
backside. So
the
they have to wait for the cycle every 2 weeks. It recharges, and then they're able to get more information. Even the Chinese landed back there as well. So, but we're not getting
Why
any.
didn't we go back?
Yeah. I'd like to check that out if there was a way to get back there, but I just and it's just hard to think about that he was able to remote view Mars, right? But at the same time, he's probably dead on, because the pyramids there's a big crater there that was hit before the pyramid. And of course, it's right next to the face on Mars. The one that said, "Oh, it's just a mountain. It's just a mountain. That's all it is." Right?
The way your eyes
Yeah.
paradox or something, your
Yeah.
eyes playing tricks on you.
Something like that. And
And monoliths, like, a lot of things that mimic what's in Egypt, obelisks, the
right.
shadows, and now he kept saying during the remote viewing and session, like, this he thought he was in Giza.
Yeah.
Like, that was the only he didn't know he was in Mars. He they gave him coordinates, not
Right. That's right.
knowing it
Yeah.
was for a different planet.
That's wild.
So, he was like, "This doesn't make sense,"
Yeah.
as he's walking remotely through a pyramid. They had structures inside, and he's like, "That's very hard to do, like, they don't have this in the Great Pyramids in Egypt." And he went further back and talked about the canyons, like, everything was cut, like, smooth,
Right.
it
Path.
was intentionally built, and the way he speaks about it and describes it reminds me of a lot of things here on Earth that we don't know how it came to be.
Yeah.
Temples that
And
looked like it was laser cut precision
yeah.
to the pyramids in Egypt and what
And
we have in Mexico and
we talked about that in the first episode that we did
Mhm.
about the pyramids and how it has a structure 1.7 miles down on 8 pillars, that's megalithic. It's huge. I mean, what goes down 1.7 miles? That it's you can't even imagine how far down that is, right? So it's huge. Something dug that far down, right, in order to put that pyramid there. And like I said it before, I'm going to say it again that it's the pyramids were there. They've been there, and why not have a pyramid on Mars that's 30, 40, or 1,000 times bigger, which that's what it is. The size of that one that we saw the picture of, that's how big it is. It's huge. It's like a country, man, the size of a country or something. It's huge because Mars is big too, as well. So it's just just thinking about how he was able to do that. And my thing is that I'm going to go back to the what we were talking, what I have on this on sharing the screen here on the files of the FBI files, right? So on this, it's kind of giving us a little bit of a terminology, right? So, and it says the investigations in the report involve a class of capabilities generally referred to as parapsychological or paranormal phenomena. These are two general types of informational or energetic, right? It says the information aspects include ability to describe remote or concealed data without the use of known sensory systems. The aspect is generally referred to as remote viewing, or RV, or the extrasensory perception, ESP. Another term, anomalous cognition, AC, is also currently used in the researchers in this field. The ability to predict future events is usually referred to in this precognition. In other words, they're kind of telling you what all these definitions of these words that if people out there are not familiar with it, then
right.
this is the
Altered states of consciousness.
right. So the
Is
appendix of everything of the wording that's in this document. Now, this document is everywhere, and it's there for anybody to read online. We'll have a link to it after this podcast. You'll see it on our description. It'll be there as well, so you guys can read it for yourselves. It's not very long. It's probably like maybe 30 pages or so. But if you're sitting at home and just kind of ain't got nothing to do, go ahead and read this, so that way you'll know exactly what this podcast is about, right?
He
And
describes what they're wearing,
yes,
like, down to, like, their clothing is very different than what humans would wear. Um, I I got lost in listening and reading the transcripts of that session because the Mars viewing session, it took place at the Monroe Institute, an organization specializing in altered states of consciousness and hemi-sync audio and out-of-body experiences. Many of the remote viewers, in the Stargate program trained there. It's widely believed that the Monroe Institute's consciousness expansion techniques enabled McGonagall to reach not just through space, but through time. And to me, that's ding, 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 ding. Not just to Mars,
right,
but through time. 1 billion BC. And he went even further back. The monitor, his handler, kept saying, "Go further," because he was there after a catastrophic event.
wow,
Whatever wiped them put them into stasis in these pyramids, into hibernation, and whether they made it here to Earth, is that where we get the emerald tablets, the ancient scrolls, Anunnaki,
right,
all of these origin stories that they span continents and ancient civilizations. They all have a common thread and theme.
right. And you know what I would like to know? It's that because there's a theory that a piece of something that hit the moon a long time ago, right? This was before the Earth was kind of forming, in a sense, when it was forming, kind of blobbish still, back before. Uh, that the moon kind of hit the Earth, and so this is why we have traces of the moon on our under our feet in the dirt. So in other words, they found traces of the moon. This is what I'm getting at now. Okay, so if that happened, wouldn't it be just probably 1 in a million chances? But if something hit Mars is not that far away from Earth. Is it a possibility that we might have some Mars dust here, if possible? I don't know if they found any or anything. I don't know, but that would be something to look for, right? If there was an impact there and maybe it shot in a certain direction, but I don't think we've researched Mars enough because you look, we still haven't researched our Earth enough, right? Our
Our
oceans,
oceans,
anything, right? So, and we're
they're
starting to,
talking about colonizing Mars, like in building. So, the people that have the money to do this,
right?
they plan on going there.
Yeah. Good
So
luck.
what do they know that we don't? I
Well,
it
I don't know.
really
I don't know.
I don't think I would wanna get on one of their rockets with their rocket fuel to get to Mars. It would be a one
Yeah.
but I go as far as we have been desensitized.
Yeah.
How they started portraying Martians. Why did they pick Mars and not any other planet?
Right.
I know Mars because of the proximity, but they started making movies, modern The Martian, where they go and colonize and try to grow
Right.
food and, like, trying to get everybody used to the idea that we're just gonna go to Mars. We haven't been back to the moon, though.
Right.
Um, it just officially and not NASA, not government, but now yesterday there was a flight, a com it's essentially commercial
Right.
space tourism. If you have enough money, you can go to outer space for 4 minutes.
Well, I believe I don't know what these guys are doing today. I believe what Ingo Swan, he died in 2013, I believe. So he passed away already, but the other
Yeah,
two guys are still living.
You
Uh,
can go meet Mr. McGonagall. He is at the Monroe Institute
yep.
teaching quite often. You can take remote viewing classes. I know people that have gone there and do remote viewing with him, and people that thought they had no abilities, no intuitiveness, left there with a successful hit, getting their target.
Right.
Yep, Fort Meade, Maryland is where this all went down, and so it makes me think, like, do you think it's possible that remote viewing is more than just a psychic trick, or maybe does it tap into something like quantum entanglement or non-local consciousness?
Yeah.
Because, like, this whole thing with remote viewing, they shuttered the program in '98. They did a review of our remote viewer this Stargate, and said it didn't yield anything. It wasn't productive.
Right.
Um,
Well, because it was only getting a third of what they wanted, so it was like, I it was a lot of hit, a lot of missed and then hit. I guess because of the people that were using, and you can't always hit it 100%. I get that we're human. We're not machines. So, but
a lot of people connected still are consultants and have security clearance.
yeah,
So in some capacity, something why are they still connected to the federal government? Or I think they still with the technology today, I can only imagine what they're able to accomplish.
yeah, yeah, for real. Because I mean, it just blows me away that everything that they did back in the day, and just to start the program to spy, and basically that's all it was. We're gonna spy, but without you not seeing me, without me being there, right? And
Oh, and the stories about them going to remote view our adversary, and then the adversary's remote viewers, they would see each other.
right,
Like, to get caught remote viewing by the other remote viewer,
right,
that's a thing that would there's been I've watched so many of them speak at conferences and podcasts, and
right.
that's something like, ooh, I I can't that would be interesting.
Well, John Dickinson says corporate America is there now, right? So I guess what we're talking about, who's got it, whatever. And it says,
Defense contractors and,
yeah, tapping into
uh,
the halls of what is that? Eminent
Amante.
Monte? It's kind of hard to read. But yeah, and yeah, John, I it's basically, you know, it's Big Brother's baby, man. And I'm sure they've named it. I don't know how many different names it had, right?
Grill Flame, it's Sunstreak. I mean, I had a list of the names, just to have it because there was sister projects, and then some they would rename them if they got found out. This was probably before FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, but, I mean, they recently exposed another surveillance program, Immaculate Constellation.
Oh yeah.
And they're not gonna shutter that program, they're gonna rename it and shove it into another top secret black ops special access program. And
One one thing I forgot to mention about Ingo Swann is this gentleman right there. The reason they grabbed him is because too, he was the first one to know that there was a ring around Jupiter.
oh, yeah. Yep. I
He was
forgot
the first he was the
he was
first one. He was the first person.
he let everybody know it, like, seeing interviews, he was very confident. I heard how they brought him on, they took him into, like, somewhere near DC, one of the buildings, and they tried tricking him so bad, and they were blown away by Ingo Swann because he was so cocky and confident, and they had agents running around the city trying to confuse, w his remote viewing.
Right.
Ingo Swann was one of a kind, and
And we're not talking about Saturn. We're talking about Jupiter.
I know. But,
So,
like, we didn't have the technology to know that. It
right.
took it took a years for them to confirm what he was able to remote view
Yeah.
for us to catch up.
I mean,
But
I would think that he would have got a big ass award for it. You know what I mean? For just knowing that before our technology got there, and that's the crazy part. I I don't know. It's how do you hit something like that? And know that there's a ring around it, right? Without seeing it or anything like that. But you
I
know,
mean, someone got the Nobel Peace Prize for quantum entanglement. I
yeah,
think, like, us figuring out that we can be here and someone can be on Jupiter,
yeah,
and what I do affects and they've tested a lot of this stuff at Monroe Institute and Stanford
right,
research where they'll have someone go to sleep in a dream and then, like, go and tell someone in another dream, like, communicate. Like, this has been studied and it's been considered fringe, but our government's been studying it at the same time as making sure academics and universities are not. They frowned upon it. They didn't want public I mean, just like they don't want us to know things right now. Like, why don't they just tell us the goods? Everything but the stuff that can fly. We don't want our adversaries getting things that could be here in 3 seconds to drop a bomb on us or something. I don't, but the rest of the stuff is overclassified in my opinion.
it
Everything.
is. It is. And I was looking at this real quick. I was kind of reading this on that section right there. If you see it, it's talking about Mr. Swan. And it's saying that Mr. Swan distinguished three phases in subjects and interpretation of his viewing capabilities. The initial percept appears to vary rapidly, with latency stated that to be as short as 1/52. So, in other words, he was pretty quick on figuring stuff out. Uh, and he just knew his stuff,
Yep.
and that's why they grabbed him. Who wouldn't grab him?
They better grab him. We don't want it was Cold War era post Vietnam, like, we don't want our the other bad guys with nukes. Anybody would it was a Cold War, but it was not cold. And
Right.
we were all worried about, the Cuban Missile Crisis. That yeah, they better grab those people up. And that I see a lot of sig like, parallels to whistleblowers right now talking about people being grabbed up and out of indigenous communities that are intuitive, and
Right.
they're using them, according to Jake Barber, a whistleblower, to intercept, non-human UFOs or whatever is flying into our space that interfaces with their technology through consciousness. They're using human assets to bring them down,
Right.
according to whistleblowers. And I see a lot of parallels like, oh, they're gonna grab up people that aren't even living in our own country because they don't want the adversary. If we're doing it,
Right.
China,
Yeah.
I mean,
and
like,
and 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 you can you like on that what is it A52 show, the guy that's one of the documentarians in it, he trained for a whole year, right, to remote view. So he tried because he wanted to try it. He wanted to see if he could do it, right? And so he was training and training, and it took him almost a whole year to be able to hit one or two out of five, but he started hitting after a while. So what I'm trying to get at here is that anyone can do this.
yep.
It just
Mm,
depends. It depends on your state of mind, really, in reality.
yep.
Because he says, when you're doing this, don't think of anything else. You have to really block everything else out and focus on on just that one thing, and you literally have to clear your mind. Now, if you're like me, that's thinking 1,000 things at the same time, it's going to be hard for me, right? But I guess with if you can train yourself using meditation or
The
frequencies
him
and
I have
anything, yeah, anything
I
like
have
that,
practiced the Monroe tapes for over a decade before there was TikTok and it went viral and people are I've been doing that and practicing, and that was what my first outer body experience was because of the Monroe tapes the very first time, because I believe I didn't have expectations. I went into it innocently, like,
right?
childlike almost, and I immediately snapped out, but once I was aware I was out, I ripped me back in. I mean, I would have never told anyone a decade ago because that's woo-woo stuff, but it's
Right.
science. It's
And have
consciousness
you ever had one of those dreams to where you're laying there or
solving,
you're dreaming and you're falling and
and
then
you jerk.
yeah, you jerk. It feels like you're
Yep. I have them all the time.
yeah. And
That
that,
you feel like you're falling, that feeling of, like, the drop in an elevator or roller coaster, and
yeah,
you knee jerk. Oh, yeah. Um, I think there's so much that academia is going in that direction. We already proved quantum entanglement and
right.
consciousness is, I think, the key. I mean, that's why we're here, the Awakening Frequency Podcast.
That's right.
From fringe to fact,
And
right?
John's out there. He
So
says he saw the structure below a black pyramid. I don't think he was aware of the stuff we just found in Egypt. Maybe I guess he's talking about a different thing that happened. Huh. What I mean, hey, if you're talking about Mister Joe, then McMeagle or something like that. What's his name?
McGonagall.
McGonagall, that maybe, yeah, he didn't know. He didn't know what he thought he was looking at Egypt, but
Yeah.
really in reality, he was looking at Mars for the coordinates because they were telling him, okay, go to coordinate 9283 and go to coordinate, 128, 36. So, and that's how they were talking to him while he was in that meditative state, to go do
And
that.
they kept saying, "Raw da just focus on the raw, quit trying to, like, make a story or let your," because your brain wants to make sense of what you're seeing, and they just want your raw data like a computer. Just give us exactly the first thing, because if you start getting in your head, you s your own thoughts come in because you have got to remove it's I've practiced, it's difficult. Sync is a tool. Uh, it's about frequencies and tones played in the left and right side of your ears to
Right.
join the brain, the 2 halves of your brain, because it works better that way.
Yeah.
Um, and I had a 3-hour session where I don't think it was outer body. I believe that's what you would call remote viewing. Uh, and I can't wait to share that one day. I wish I woulda recorded it. Bob Monroe's I listened he talked me through it. Those tapes will live on for eternity. It's in the archives.
Nice. Well, where can you find those?
Literally archives.org.
Archives.org.
Google the Monroe tapes
Yeah.
and the original, and I'm a little, not trustworthy. I don't trust Big Brother.
Yeah.
Um, Something about the tapes when they're on YouTube, people would upload the originals, they'd get quickly taken down, and the ones that are there that they allow you to have access just aren't, in my opinion, the same as what I found a decade ago or
Right.
what's on the archives. I struggle more because I'm how easy it is for them to turn a frequency by hertz
Yeah.
to throw it off.
Yeah.
'Cause they don't want us all out here
Right.
with these abilities.
Well, it's just like 440 and 432, right? So
Yeah.
that's why they changed the whole thing of music, because it was just kind of breaking up our way of thinking, and I think that's why they did that too, because I don't know, it's you have to it's got to be your diet, it's got to be everything that we ingest in our bodies in order to have more clairvoyancy, to have more clarity, right? Because you will get clairvoyancy if let's just say you fast for 3 or 5 days, right? And people say that they when they fast they can think better sometimes, most
Your
of the time they can
senses
think
are
better.
sharpened.
Yeah, they can think better and start eating the right foods and stay away from processed things or whatever, and stay within the frequencies that you need to be around. In other words, we know our Wi-Fi is horrible with the EMFs and it. They've been talking about that lately. That it's kind of like it's throwing everything off with your
Mhm.
body, right? It's sending different signals to your body. You almost have to you almost have to wear a damn aluminum suit in order to be next to your phone or to be anywhere else, because I've noticed that if you have something aluminum, it'll deflect it.
Yep.
So,
Faraday bags are my best friend.
right, and I'm sure with these gentlemen that when they did this Stargate program, that they made sure that their diet was clear, and that they probably had them really in a secured area where everything was kind of clear what they ate, stuff like that. Probably.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've seen the cubes that they go into, these beds, they're like a bunker, like you're in a blackout bed. It's complete darkness. It deprives your senses, so you are fully focused.
Right,
'Cause I've seen friends go there. I wanted to see if I could go to the Monroe Institute. Civilians can go. It
right.
costs a pretty penny. Um, and one of the first things they have you do, not just remote viewing, is bending spoons. That's
Ben's,
up there,
yeah,
that's telekinesis.
yeah,
They that and that's fascinating to watch people go through that process because of things like social media and TikTok. They're taking you along on that experience.
right,
Um, we have some modern day, I think, Ingo Swann type of people that have worked for our government more recently, and they're spilling the beans, about hacking your brain, mind hacking happiness. This guy, Sean Webb, has talked all about a lot in these circles by Joe McGonigal, Remote Viewer 001.
right.
They're friends. Um, I I think there's something to it. That's
Wow.
why I'm here doing this.
Yeah. Well, we're coming to the end of this program today. So, thanks to everybody that's watching today, and I hope you learned a little bit. I mean, we kind of went back and forth on some things, but you got to hear our point of view of the Stargate project, because it was part of the arc, looking for the arc, looking for top secret things that they couldn't find anywhere, and we talked about these gentlemen because they did a lot for intelligence, right? And to find out if something was going on beyond their noses and all that good stuff. But like I said, if you guys enjoyed this podcast today, and want more, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe to everything that we have. YouTube, we're on Twitch right now, we're on Rumble. uh Follow us here, follow us there, and we are on audio podcast. So this will be on audio podcast as well. So if you missed it, you'll be able to catch it on audio as well. What you got left, Danielle?
Well, let's not forget this month we'll have our first guest interview. Mr. Jason Sands, a military whistleblower. I know there's a lot of big feelings people have, but I am excited to get him on our podcast and let's talk. He's an interesting, intelligent dude, very kind and humble. And I'm super grateful he's going to come on and see us. And so make sure you got your notifications on so you don't miss this episode with Mr. Jason Sands. We'll be releasing the date soon. Other than that, keep your mind open and your frequency higher.
That's right. That's right. Keep an open mind. Keep your frequency higher. Keep reaching for the stars. We're going to be there guiding you all the way.
The future is the frequency. Stay aligned.
See you on the next one. Have a good one. Follow Ufology's #1 podcast, the Awakening Frequency Podcast, with host Donald Ledesma and Danielle Henchcliffe. Follow at Facebook, Patreon, TikTok, Rumble, and YouTube. Hit like and subscribe. Also listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Radio, iHeartRadio, and YouTube Music.